Right. With Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming out this week, when has there ever been a better time to have a conversation about the worst Pokemon from every generation? This list is completely my opinion, completely my view, and yet it's still right, and yours is wrong. Unless you agree, then it's right too. Or you can convince me, then it's also right. But this list is right. Let's begin. Let's get into it. Gen 1 is one of the most definitive answers I think that I have. It's Jinx. Jinx is creepy. I hate it. It needs to leave. It needs to get out. I think it's the only Gen 1 Pokemon I truly dislike. There was a tiny case for Magmar. I'm not a huge fan of the little duck bill, but it slides. It's okay. I don't hate it. Jinx, go away. Next up is Gen 2. And this is a harder generation. There's a lot of very solid Pokemon in Gen 2. I actually don't think there's a lot of great ones, but there's a lot of good ones. Sunflora was possibly on the chopping block, because it's just a flower, but actually, I don't hate it. It's not hateable. One that is, and this is not because it's a bad design necessarily, it's because it could have been so much more, and that's Gramble. Gramble is fine. It's absolutely fine, but Snubbull is great. I love Snubbull. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. And Gramble could have been so much more. And for that reason, I hate it. I hate the sense that we lost something that we could have had. Now, here we are on Gen 3, which I used to say was my favorite generation. And after going through all of the Pokedex, it might no longer be, because there's a lot of questionable decisions on this one. Plusle and Minun were up for contention, along with Volbeat, and I never know how to say it. Volbeat especially, because it's the worst version of Illuminati, or whatever the fuck it's called. The one that I did put on the list, and I know a lot of people actually do really like this, but I don't, is Manectric. Manectric is clunky, and it is a worse version of Pokemon that were added later. I think both Luxray and I think it's Boltund in Gen 8 are better versions of what this is trying to be. It is disappointing. It is basic, and I hate it. Now we have gotten to Gen 4. Gen 4 is another really good generation, very strong. There were not many, but there are some. An honorable mention to Heatran. The fact that that thing is a legendary is ridiculous. It's goofy, and I dislike it strongly, but it doesn't take the hate spot. The hate spot is going to Drapion. I don't like the segmentation of the body. I don't like that its arms are connected to its head. I don't like that all poison types are purple up until this point. That's just boring, but that, I guess, is not its fault, really. That's just... But it's goofy. It's dumb looking. The segments are weird. I feel like it's supposed to be intimidating, and it isn't. And I hate it. Now let's go ahead with Gen 5. Gen 5 is a smorgasbord of Pokemon I don't like. Partially because there are so many Pokemon in there, that there's bound to be a couple rubbish ones. And there are two that I was kind of toying between. Watchog, I think, is going to be the crowd's least favorite. Everyone seems to hate it. I don't know many people who like it at all. But I'm putting my first legendary on this list. Tornadus, or the genies in general. All three of them, on the cloud human man forms, the genie forms, I hate them. Ugh. Moving on to Gen 6, the home of arguably the most hated Pokemon ever, Aromatisse. Everyone hates Aromatisse, and I am no exception. But do I hate it the most in Gen 6? And that's a big no. There is a bigger offender in Gen 6, in my opinion, and that's Binacle. Binacle? Get in the Binacle. I hate it so much. It's hands on a rock. I hate it. It's shitlit. I hate it. Get rid of it. Get it out of my house. Get it out of my face. I don't want to see it. It evolves into something a bit cooler, but not much. Not enough to save it from the Binacle. Gen 7... another smorgasbord of crap in some ways, but also some great ones. I love Decidueye. This might be my most controversial answer, because there are a couple real stinkers in here. I think a few that people will say, Delmise is an anchor. I don't hate it, but I don't like it. Gumoosh, Gumshoe, Gum whatever. You can't make a weasel that looks like Donald Trump and get away with it, Pokemon. That's not allowed. If it was intentional, that'd be very funny. But it isn't, so I don't like it. Get it out of my house. But it's not the worst. And this is probably the most controversial one that's on this list. My least favorite, my most hated Pokemon from this generation is Incineroar. Much loved by the community, much hated by me. Pokemon has been throwing firefighting types at us for so long, and then we got a brief respite with a fire dark type that's themed as a cat wrestler, a fighting man, a fighting cat man. The amount of disrespect the Pokemon company has to create a fighting fire cat, but then also not make it fighting type. Oh. And the more I talk about it, the more I actually think it's very funny. And I kind of like Incineroar a bit more, but also I hate it and get rid of it. Coming up near the end, Gen 8. Gen 8 is probably my least favorite series of games. It has some dodgy starters. Everyone knows that. We all think it. I considered putting Inteleon, not Inteleon, but the stage before Inteleon, Sobble's evolution. I considered putting him in here. His 3D model is ghastly, but it doesn't quite reach the heights that of hatred, I think. One I will defend, and everyone else seems to hate, is Thievul, the fox thing. I actually kind of like it. I used that for most of my playthrough of Sword and Shield. The one I will not let slide, and I've not seen talked about at all, is when they turned Charlie Chaplin into a Pokemon. What the fuck? Mr. Rhyme. There are no words. There is no part of me that understands who... This was greenlit so many times, so far up the chain of command. It's abhorrent. I hate it. I hate it so much. It is a man. That's a man. That's a human man. There's a cold psychic human man. I don't like it at all. Make it go away. And while it is not a generation, I am going to go through the Hisuian variants as well, because they were tacked on to Gen 8, and I don't think that's entirely fair, because then I can't hate more Pokemon. Sneasler was very, very close to being put on this list. Sneasler is on thin bloody ice, but it didn't quite take the top spot, and they've come up before. Forces of Nature. Enamorous is terrifying. I hate it. It's awful. I think there's one guy. There must just be one guy who just like every Pokemon release, he just designs a bunch of crap, but no one's allowed to say no to him for some reason. So he just sneaks them in, and then most of the Pokemon are great, most of them are fine, and there's just this one guy running around making a few awful things. And Enamorous is terrifying. Good night. Which Pokemon do you hate the most? These are the right answers. I do still want to hear your wrong ones, though.